And I thought it would be interesting for people who don't know who you guys are, like we do every week. Do you want to give a quick intro for who you are? And for those who, I'm assuming since you're on my platform that you know who I am, but my name's Jen and I run the EcoL. Esther, would you like to go next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Esther Olu. I'm a cosmetic chemist slash formulator. I also do a little bit of psychom on Instagram and Twitter at the Melanin. Excuse me, on Instagram at the Melanin Chemist. Nice to meet everybody.
Harry, would you like to go next?
Sure, I'm Perry Romanowski, a longtime cosmetic chemist and formulator. I've been in the industry for a lot of years, probably before some of you were born. I started out as a formulator, and now I pretty much do science communication, education. I do some consulting, but I have a podcast called The Beauty Brains, and I also have a website called Chemist Corner, where people can learn how to formulate.
Cassandra, it worked. Would you like to go next?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. Hi, my name is Cassandra Celeste, and I am the beauty chemist. I have a company called Beauty Alchemy Group. I've been consulting in the area of cosmetic chemistry for 15 years, and I am a complete cosmetic chemist, hair care, skincare, hair color, color cosmetics.
Lolita, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Good to see everyone. I'm Lolita Iyer. I'm also a chemist, and I am here on the East Coast. I also go by the name Skin Chemi on Instagram, and also along with Jen and Esther, and I'm involved in SciComm conversations on Instagram.
And finally, Marissa, would you like to go?
Hi everyone, I'm Marissa Plesha. I'm a cosmetic chemist and formulator at Bell International Laboratories in Minnesota, actually. I'm also the research scientist at the beauty retailer Naked Poppy. And I'm just starting actually getting into Instagram and science communication at FemChem Beauty. I'm also the chair of the SCC Twin Cities chapter and the chair of the Next Gen initiative for the Society of Cosmetic Chemists.
And I guess stay tuned. Marissa is going to be featured on our podcast in a few weeks to talk about, I guess, what it takes to become a cosmetic chemist. We've had this conversation a number of times, including with Perry, I think a few times, including on this platform. But for a different person's perspective, stay tuned for the podcast. And I guess my first question to each of you, I think it'll be really interesting to hear your answers and also maybe hear other people's reactions to your answers. But is there any innovation, which is the topic of this conversation? I guess I didn't actually say that. The topic of tonight's conversation is going to be on cosmetic industry or ingredient innovation. So is there any innovation in the cosmetic space that you're really excited about? Marissa, would you like to start this one?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think by nature, cosmetic chemistry, cosmetic science is a science. So there's innovation and there's always going to be innovation behind it. I think what I'm actually most excited about recently is innovation and in terms of ingredients out there. And especially we are seeing a lot of ingredients that are becoming, that are bioengineered ingredients. Like we are seeing, vegan collagen, we are seeing kind of genetically engineered kind of ingredients out there. I know we're seeing a lot of like silk proteins that are that are bioengineered. So we're kind of going away from traditional ingredients that you would get from animals or plants, and we're starting to see this kind of bioengineered. And kind of with that, I think something that is really interesting is that we are seeing a lot of upcycling now in terms of ingredient innovation and looking at byproducts and waste, and kind of using just, I know there's wood pulp waste. I've seen it with sugar. I've seen it like beetroot pulp, all these different ingredients that I've seen that are upcycling, and we are reducing our waste in the industry and also being more sustainable. So I think that's where I've seen a lot of excitement in terms of innovation.
Marissa, you've stolen my answer. Those are the two things I'm most excited about as well. Upcycling and biotech. Big fan.
No. I know, it's so cool.
Cassandra, would you like to go next?
Yeah, she stole my answer too. I think the way the trend with the world globally with sustainability and bio is helping people to think outside the box and be innovative. So yeah, I agree with her.
Now, considering Cassandra, you do cosmetic. You specialize in hair care. Perry, you as well. Is there anything in the hair care space for innovation? I'd be interested for both of your perspectives that are really exciting, past, I guess, biotech and upcycling, which is seemingly everywhere around the industry. Is really exciting.
I know people. Some people are very big fans of the bond creating technologies that are out there. Um, I I'm a little less excited about it. Jim, just to sort of get back to what I am excited about, though. Um, I kind of looked at this innovation idea of what innovations do I think are actually going to have an impact on the industry in the coming years. And it was interesting that the first few answers were about the raw materials and not really necessarily about how the products function. And I think that's still going to be the case. I think just some innovations that are going to have big impacts could be animal testing replacements. There's a lot of research going on looking at the few places where there still needs to be animal tests, to mimic organs and that sort of thing. There's a lot there, and I think that could have a big impact coming up, especially with bans on animal tested ingredients. So companies are going to have to find a way, if they want new ingredients, they need to find a way to prove they're safe. And so I think that could have a big impact. We just had a webinar with the IFSCC this morning on DNA barcoding of natural ingredients, and it's a way to track the authenticity of ingredients, and I think that could have a big impact. I agree, the bio-derived fermentation effects of raw materials is going to be pretty big. And as far as functional stuff, I think there might be something to epigenetic ingredients, but those are a little ways off.
Now, Perry, what do you mean by epigenetic ingredients? And then also, what are some examples of epigenetic ingredients that may be on the market, or is this something that's on the market? How will this impact consumers? Lay it on me.
No, great question. Well, there are a few companies that claim that their ingredients interact with the DNA. So epigenetics basically is a way that you can interact with DNA and you cause methylation of the DNA sequences, and that'll essentially stop production of certain things, so you can turn things on and off. So I believe L'Oreal actually had a product. They presented at a couple of years ago. They presented at a national SEC meeting where they demonstrated, and they claimed it was epigenetic effects, but it's an ingredient that would go down and into the melanosomes and then turn off the melanin production. And so it was a way to, using epigenetics, a way to stop skin discoloration. So that's the kind of technology. I think it's a new science, and I think there is something to it. We'll see. I have much more high hopes about that than something like the microbiome, which is just that's just way complicated.
Lolita, would you like to chime into the original question?
Sure. I think, I've seen a lot of indie brands or even like big brands come out with personalization, whether that's AI or however it is. There's so much going on with all this, smart serums and custom hair care like Function of Beauty and Pros have custom hair care where you fill out a quiz and then, it does like an algorithm for you and gives you your own unique combination. I think it's a cool concept. Of course, like everyone has a different skin type, so we all need a personalized product. But at the same time, I don't know. It's not that I don't fully believe in it, but I just sometimes wonder, well, are they giving the same combination of a smart serum to like 1,000 people and we just don't know, right? So I do think it's a cool, like,
we know. We know, and that's
well,
what
we
they're doing.
know. Well, but so I think personalization is something that I think is pretty cool, and I think it's innovative in the skincare industry. And you see so many brands coming out with using beauty tech and AI into their brand and marketing. So yeah.
Now, I would love to hear everyone else's thoughts on personalized beauty, and I totally agree with Lolita. It's a really cool concept. I haven't seen anyone do it well, and I'm not sure. I'm not so sure about whether this will actually give better products for individuals. I mean, they may perceive it to be personalized to them. And then, depending on, for example, if there's like some tech to make it truly personalized, it would be hard to legitimize it. But perhaps there would be a placebo effect that makes them feel like the product is better. I don't know. I don't know if I fully formed my opinions on this. But what does everyone else think about the topic of personalized beauty?
I agree, but it's also interesting because I sometimes come at it from, I'm in contract manufacturing. And so I just find it as like a scale up contract manufacturing. I can't imagine doing personalized beauty at my facility. I think it would be such a complicated situation. And, there's so much QC that's happening anyway, and so much, like automation and making sure everything is, compounding and everything. And so the idea of personalized beauty in a contract manufacturing scale up sense, like, is very intimidating. And I've kind of wondered how it's actually occurring now. And I think it's because it's at very small facilities. So,
Well, I also sometimes wonder if maybe companies aren't doing testing for all the potential iterations, aren't doing sufficient testing, and then just making the assumption that their base formula is stable and then it'll remain stable, or it'll remain fine as they add additional ingredients to personalize the product. I don't know though. Maybe I'm completely wrong. What do you guys think?
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm working with someone on a concept like this. And yeah, it is kind of difficult to, like, you can get to a certain point, but when you have to scale up, it's like, what are you going to do? Yeah, so you have a base formula, and then you would have the different iterations, like the ones, for example, the active that you would add at the end that would be, under 40C, and you would test all those quality control at first to see what you would have with those different type of actives or extracts, whatever it is. And then you have a guideline saying, okay, we can make this product for this person that they fit that model, so we're going to give them this. So people think, like you said, they think that it's really made for them, but you might have like 100 iterations that were tested, and then you have like this bulk. We're like, okay, we're saying you have oily hair, oily scalp, X, Y, and Z, and this is what we're giving you, and it's already tested. But I don't know if every individual product, 8-ounce, 12-ounce, 16-ounce shampoo, conditioner, is being sent out to QC or being, tested for microbes or whatever before the person gets it. That's where I know we're looking into that, because I think that's kind of like an issue as well.
those are great points, Cassandra. I was also going to add that I've seen a lot of the times, like these custom, like smart serums or whatever you call them, they give you like a 15 ml, product instead of a 30 or 50 ml. And on top of that, they say, well, this is going to last you for 30 days. And so I've seen like all these, expiration, like, use it for 30 days and it's only 15 ml. And so that kind of makes us think like, oh, okay, so this kind of makes sense. Well, maybe that's why they couldn't, they obviously didn't like do maybe a stability or just only tested a couple of iterations, and hence they're offering just a 15 ml and asking you to use it up within 30 days just to be on the safe side in case, something goes wrong if you, were to use it after 3-4 months. So I think, yeah, you're right, like, how much testing was done, was there any, how many iterations of testing was done? And I've also seen like on Reddit, I browse Reddit so much that I've seen Curology, so many people have the same exact combination but different skin types. And so sometimes I'm like, well, this person has oily skin, but then they've been prescribed the exact same combination as someone with, dry and sensitive skin. So it's like, where is the personalization in that? Right. So that's kind of when I start getting a little skeptical, like, what's going on?
I really don't think that personalization is like realistic, at least when it comes to the beauty industry, especially because a lot of these formulas, they're getting manufactured somewhere. So it wouldn't be cost effective for a manufacturer to be purchasing multitudes of raw materials just to fit one person's skin. Especially, I was actually going to bring up Curology too, Lolita, and it's true that a lot of formulas are pretty much the exact same or in like very different concentrations. It's not going to benefit a manufacturer to purchase several different raw materials just to, like I said, to fit one person or several people. They want to make money. But I do find it interesting that there are some websites that they recommend products, not necessarily give formulas, but they just recommend products. So I'd actually like to know people's thoughts about that instead of like brands like Curology.
I have to agree with everything that everyone's saying here about the challenges of manufacturing customized products. It just it seems like if you're gonna have a mass-produced product, you really can't do any customization beyond what has traditionally been customization, where you say, "Oh, this is for curly hair, this is for straight hair," and that kind of thing. And so I think the production problem is a big thing. But I see two other problems with customization, which these will have to be overcome. Before I actually have thought of a way that you could overcome the problem of manufacturing, but I'll save that for later. But the problems with developing products is, first of all, if you knew somebody's genetics or you knew somebody's specific skin type, I don't think cosmetic science is advanced enough to be able to prescribe the perfect product for that person. Because products, how they work, it really depends not only on how they actually work, but it also depends on how the consumer thinks they're working. And the experience, and maybe one consumer needs the same product as another one, but one of them likes a more greasy product, or they want a product that goes in faster. So it's very difficult to get a product that works and it meets the aesthetic desires of the consumer. So I think that's a huge problem with that. And then the other big challenge with customized products is that consumers just aren't that good at telling whether a product is actually working. They can say whether they like using a product or not, but they can't tell whether a technology is working for them. And until you can create products where consumers see obvious benefits pretty quickly too, I don't think customized things will go anywhere anytime soon. But those are my thoughts on customizing.
Esther, back to the original question. Would you like to go next?
Down, but I'm still gonna mention it. I'm actually pretty interested about the microbiome. I know there's like a lot of debate around this topic. Since I wouldn't say it's new. It's just like there's like not a lot of research behind it as of current. I got invited to a presentation next week with Bioderma. They're releasing a product that is meant to sanitize our hands, but also maintain. So how do I explain this? They're pretty much trying to kill the bad microbes, but also without affecting our microbiome. but like replenishing the microbiome. There's like a word for it. I'm like completely forgetting it right now. But it's like this, I don't know if it's like a new technology. They're claiming it's like a new technology by them. So I'm kind of curious how far microbiome innovation will get. But as of right now, I'm kind of skeptical. I just want to know what's going to happen with it.
FYI for everyone, I have a roundtable on the topic of skin microbiome. Esther, I feel like you'll really like it, featuring a few different perspectives: a pharmacist, a dermatologist, dermatopathologist, Aegean, and then also a microbiologist who has dedicated pretty much his whole career to the topic, well, at least a large portion of his career to this topic, Rainer Simmering from Henkel. And we talked about this topic in quite a lot of detail, but it really highlighted the lack of data for what's on the market today, but also the opportunity for the future of, especially for skin conditions, for maybe moving away from things like antibiotics with respect to like acne treatment. But we've got a long way to go. That was kind of the conclusion of that podcast. I don't know. Would anyone else like to chime in on the topic of skin microbiome?
I would just echo those thoughts. I think the microbiome we're in such an early phase of what we know about it. It's really difficult to make any products that to address it. I always think it's like if you think of the microbiome, like your skin as a zoo filled with different animals. Who knows what the perfect zoo is? How many giraffes you're supposed to have or elephants, and you just imagine that, but thousands of more organisms. So knowing what the good bacteria is and the bad bacteria, I don't even think we know that. And then how do you feed them differently? So I think there is certainly some potential here, but this is one of those technologies. It's going to get marketed for the next dozens of years, but I don't think we're going to have anything really for the next 20 years, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I actually am very interested in the microbiome as well. And, the Human Genome Project at this point, I think, is about 30 years old. So we have done some research on it, but when it comes to the skin microbiome, it's still definitely being developed. And where I see the concern is that I do think there's a lot of potential there, but I think recently there has been so much marketing around it that, like, the industry needs to be very careful about. I have seen so much recently in terms of like there's like a new certified microbiome like friendly organization. We're starting to get into the point where you're getting those like paid for testing labels on ingredients on actual products itself. And I think that's where we have to be really careful too, because what makes it microbiome friendly? What testing are they doing? And I think that's also kind of something I've kind of reached out to those testing facilities and, haven't really gotten much response back on like, okay, well, what are your actual parameters? What are your scientific claims and testing? And how are you doing this? Why are you saying this? And I think that's where we have to be really careful is kind of the marketing of it now, because I do think there's potential there, but we got to be careful with what we say and what we're claiming.
I know exactly what brand you're talking about. I saw it online too, and I was like, what is this? It's so debatable. It's so debatable. And I just feel like with time, a microbiome friendly is definitely going to become a marketing term.
Yeah. And I actually think I've been trying to do a little research into it. And I think what's happening is people are saying it's microbiome friendly if it doesn't have a preservative in it, which basically just means we just have oil-based formulas. And I'm like, that connection there is also very to me, so it's a little.
Well, and I'll just chime in based off of some of the things that I've learned in this panel that I had that isn't published yet, but it'll be published. I think I'm actually publishing it next week. And so the findings based off of the research that Reiner was doing was that preservatives don't actually have that profound of an impact for our skin microbiome. It's more the surfactants and how they may disrupt. I mean, you could think about like if you're washing away the lipids, then you might have more transepidermal water loss, inflammation. Then there's like a cascade effect if that might impact the skin microbiome. And then with respect to the testing, this panel, we kind of talked about it, and apparently they're not actually testing it on the face where the products would actually be applied. The test is actually being done, I think, on the forearm. And so, like, just so you guys know, the skin microflora is different around the body. So how that's relevant to the face is debatable. Just thought I'd chime in there. Lolita, did you have something to say about this topic?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the marketing around the whole microbiome topic is just, I feel like it's just getting so out of hand, because you see so many of these brands say, microbiome skincare, highly effective, next generation, clinically proven to deliver results, etc. And at some point it's like, well, okay, so you're saying all of this, but then where are your clinical studies? What did they say? Can we see them? And you just never see them. So I think that the marketing around these terms is something that's just gaining in popularity without consumers understanding that, well, these words don't really mean anything until we actually see results.
One of the areas in this, I think most of the products on the market that talk about microbiome, they're just tapping into sort of a marketing hype. But there is one brand that I think is maybe doing something differently, or they're really good at convincing me they are. But that brand is Mother Dirt, and they talk about having live microbes in their products. And I don't know if their products work or anything, but they don't shy away from saying that they're actually using live microbes, which might be the future, or it might be just a terrible idea. I can't.
Oh, this was something that also came up on the panel, and apparently they're using live microorganisms, I think from horses, so they may not actually be relevant to humans. At least we don't have a history of it, as far as I understand. Yeah. Stay tuned. The panel was really great. It was really interesting, and I think I'm going to publish it next week. I guess now, Perry, you brought up an interesting point that I hadn't really thought about it when I thought about questions to ask, which is, I guess, innovation around product design. And you see it with so many different launches, like when micellar water was first launched. It was like, oh, this is a new product. Is it? So is there any new kind of innovative products out there that you're excited about? Or is it all kind of just the same with new marketing? What do you guys think? And Esther, would you like to go first on this one?
I really just think that they're just finding new ways to market things. If I'm being completely honest, I haven't seen anything like extremely out of extremely crazy yet. I just think nowadays they're just finding new things to market. I feel like the most innovation really does come from like the raw material suppliers and the biotech and pharmaceutical industry. But it's not necessarily being marketed by the brand by the cosmetic brands themselves. I mean, at least from like what I've seen. But I'm actually kind of curious like what's going to happen with sunscreen technology, because I know that one's always improving. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens with that.
Perry, would you like to go next? Or Lolita, I saw you had your mic button off. Would you like to go next?
Sure. I think, I don't know, but I think encapsulation to some extent I feel a little excited about, just because it makes formulation a little easier, and it gives you, at least formulators, makes formulating easy. You can get more creative with your formulations, offer more, a variety of different combinations that perhaps you couldn't have done before. I know one of the big ones is Amcol has their, retinaldehyde, which is actually a pretty cool microencapsulation technology. And I think, encapsulation, I think, is something that I do feel excited about. I know not a lot of brands have incorporated it, especially startup brands. It's very expensive. It increases your cost and all of that. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I do feel somewhat excited about encapsulation technology. I don't know if anyone else does.
I think it's pretty cool. I think there's some significant manufacturing issues, and the whole idea that if an encapsulate could withstand the pressures involved in mixing and filling on filling lines, then how is the consumer going to break it open and when they're using it in a shower? So I think there's some issues there, but yeah, I agree. There's some interesting things there. Another technology which I think has come out and it's really kind of hit the market sort of significantly. The products right now to me are still crap, but solid products like solid
Yeah.
shampoos, solid body washes, or even like paper sheet products, I think those could have a big impact. And it's an area where formulators have a chance to do something because, like I said, the products right now they're kind of crap. So there's chances to innovate.
I agree with Perry. I was just going to say all the waterless formulas that are coming out now. That's a new market, and like Perry said, also they're not as great, and it's an opportunity for cosmetic chemists to get in there and just really work with different materials to get something very innovative out there. That's within that category.
And I guess
Yes, I
sorry. Last but not least, Marissa, would you like to chime in?
yeah. Well, I was gonna say I agree. I am seeing with the waterless, and I've the whole like eco-friendly. They're saying most products are like 80% water anyway. Like that marketing kind of way doesn't really. I don't really see that so much with the waterless products, but I do see the pure convenience in them. I think especially when it comes to surfactant products, so like face washes, body washes, hair. I think that is very convenient in this whole waterless type of product. And then I do think we are seeing a lot of more products that is kind of talking about like hitting everything. So skincare, color, has sun care. Like we're seeing like a lot of products move into like having multi benefits. So as opposed to having to use, your sunscreen, your moisturizer, and then your foundation, we've always had kind of the color cosmetics with the SPF, but we're seeing just more of this kind of multi benefit product, which I think is going to be really interesting to see how we as cosmetic chemists, especially, formulate those and still make them aesthetically pleasing, and have all the benefits that the consumer wants, both in terms of ingredients, but in terms of textures and actives and all of that. And then I would say too, another kind of product, I mean, this is like a weird innovation slash transparency, everything, is that we are just seeing so many more products and brands call out actual concentrations of ingredients in their formulations, in their products, and I think that's going to continue. And I think that's something that consumers are going to start looking for more and more is, hey, I have this product, and especially I see this with the AHAs and the BHAs and everything is like, I want a product with at least 10% glycolic acid, and I'm going to look for that product that says it has 10% glycolic acid. So I think that's also kind of a weird marketing innovation that I'm seeing, but it also relates to the product types that we formulate as well.
Quick shout out to Capricornium. Hopefully I said your username right, who suggested this talk. Thank you. And to anyone that's in the audience, if you guys have any questions or comments that you'd like to contribute to this chat, feel free to raise your hand and I'll be able to bring you to the stage and you can ask your question or make your comment. But I guess on the flip side, my next question is, are there any trends that are marketed as innovative that are kind of more hype than what they're actually worth? There's probably a lot of them, and I guess micellar water was one of them. Not really that innovative. I guess that's kind of an old thing. But Lolita, would you like to go first on this one?
Yeah, I think at first we were all excited about the whole single ingredient skincare products. Because yeah, they were cool. You could, choose your specific skin concern and choose a product based on what would address that skin concern and just buy that. But I guess over time, what happened was people were just buying way too many. They're cheap. They're, easy to manufacture, hence cheap. So people just buy like 10 products and end up just using all 10 of them. And next thing you know, like, you have a burn or a rash, or you have like insane amount of irritation. So I think at first it seemed like a really cool idea, and it did disrupt the industry. If I were to use the word disruptive, then yeah, and we know which brand we're talking about. But I think over time, what happened was, I think people just started using way too many products on their face.
The trend that backfired, and it certainly worked, given that I forget how much they sold it for, but The Ordinary just sold, it was a few $1 billion, and I forget who it was sold to. Somebody tell me now if you know this.
Estee Lauder.
So obviously effective and certainly disruptive. Esther, would you like to go next?
I want to say two things. So the first thing was the higher concentration of actives. I think it's really not innovative. If anything, it just caused a moment where everybody was like oversensitizing their skin barrier. I just think it was a very horrible move by brands, especially when they weren't doing the proper education to their consumers. And then the whole aspect around double cleansing, this wasn't, I don't consider this an innovation at all. I think it caused a lot of misinformation because people don't really understand the purpose of surfactants, and people made it seem that double cleansing was like an absolute must. And then a lot of side commerce like Lolita and Michelle were kind of explaining the foundation of what surfactants are and how double cleansing isn't necessary. So now there's kind of like some pushback on this topic. So those are my two things.
Now, Esther, just in case people don't know, what does double cleansing entail? Is there a specific attribute about the different products that we're looking for? Is one of the product a product that has surfactants to get the product out? What's going on with it?
So I guess people use an oil cleanser as like the first cleanse, and that's to remove like the makeup and the sunscreen, or people consider it to remove like water resistant sunscreen, etc. And then the second cleanse would be like the water-based cleanser. So there's like a lot of emphasis on you must have an oil-based cleanser to remove your makeup and remove your sunscreen, because it's not gonna get washed away with a water-based cleanser. And the irony of it all is that they both use surfactants or some form of emulsifier to help break sunscreen and makeup down. So there's like a lot of misconceptions around double cleansing.
Perry, would you like to go next?
So we're talking about things that are overhyped and the beauty industry. Well, I think some of the stuff that we already talked about, which is promising, but it's it's way too early, and that happens so often with a lot of ingredients in the cosmetic industry. I had one of the things that I think is way overhyped right now is the whole beauty from within trend. So your drinkable skincare products. A lot of people are convinced that drinking collagen or biotin is going to help your hair or skin. But the science on that just does not shake out. Your body doesn't know once it's breaking down proteins what the source of that protein was. So I'm not convinced, despite what a lot of people believe. And there have been studies out, certainly double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. I just think those are not very good studies, and because the whole idea of something going in your stomach and then surviving that and then going out and affecting your skin and hair, it goes against sort of what we know about biology. So I think that whole beauty from within is probably what I would say my top overhyped trend at the moment.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that a lot of cosmetic companies are kind of jumping on the bandwagon. And I guess my pessimistic thought of when I see this is I wonder if they're doing this because they can make easily, because of, especially in the USA, not so great regulations. They can make strong claims that they wouldn't otherwise be able to make. And certainly that's appealing to consumers. Everyone's looking for a silver bullet to help with whatever skin ailment. But I guess that's my pessimistic view. Anyone else want to add to that?
Well, I would just add into that is I just say the whole idea is like it's awesome. It would be great if it worked. Like there's that whole notion of a drinkable sunscreen. Wouldn't that be much better than slathering up some crappy cream all over your body? But yeah, I don't think the technology is there yet.
Marissa, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. And actually, I was just reading something on Beauty Within to this afternoon because I have melasma actually, and so I was reading something about tranexamic acid supplements, and I was reading a study on taking that ingestible as a pill. It's by prescription only, but that helping with melasma. And it's just so interesting because I do think there are benefits in some instances, but the idea of it helping, drinking, hyaluronic acid and that really helping your skin is a whole different situation. But I actually think something that's getting really overhyped right now is actually kind of the sustainable packaging trend. We are seeing a lot of beauty brands and kind of, different retailers even saying, it has to be PCR, so post-consumer recycled plastic, or, we're seeing, now the cardboard tubes and kind of all of that in glass jars and everything. And I think that is something that's getting overhyped right now because it's still so new and the innovation behind it is still so new. And there's so many other things to consider in terms of the sustainability of those packaging in to begin with. Like, yes, you might be using cardboard tubes and like post recycled paper, but a product is still touching that tube. So is it really recyclable in the end? Because, as you know, when you do recycle things, you usually have to provide like clean, you have to wash out your containers before putting them in the recycling bin. So I think that kind of, and like there's also so many formulation challenges with all these kinds of new packaging types that are coming out. So I think that's kind of a trend that I'm seeing that I do think it's good. I think, we should look for more sustainable packaging. We should protect our earth, but we need to do a lot more research behind it and know all the implications before making it into such a necessary that all brands have. So,
Speaking of packaging, did everyone see that cardboard bottle fiasco where a company
Yes.
came out
Yeah.
with a cardboard bottle, but it was in plastic on the inside? So
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah, yeah. It's interesting because even with the you know, when you formulate, you have to make sure that the packaging is compatible with that formulation. So it could be post-consumer plastic, but it still has to have different layers within that will prevent leaching, will prevent all those different things from the product. So it's something that I think is getting overhyped. But like if you actually look at it, you got to look at it with like a fine tooth comb and actually understand all the implications of it. So.
Julia Ruby, who just asked, did Discord just glitch and put everyone's hand up? That was me trying to encourage you guys to get to the stage. So, I mean, put your hands up and come to the stage and ask your questions, make your comments. Packaging is a big bugbear of mine because I find that everything is kind of built for the marketing kind of around assumptions rather than hard evidence and doesn't really capture the complexity looking at waste management systems around the world. Everyone is so eager to switch to cardboard, and you had highlighted the fact that, well, with a lot of the products in cosmetics, you're going to have to do a plastic lining that's going to render the product, the packaging, harder to recycle. And you're also relying on the fact that consumers have to effectively clean the product, which may or may not be the case. I think people don't realize the fact that to create cardboard, it's actually a lot more carbon intensive, resource intensive to produce cardboard compared to many of the types of plastics that are used in cosmetics. We've gotten really good at producing plastics as a society. And to add to that, because we have gotten so good with plastics as a society, around the world, the most recycled materials, because our waste management systems are set up for it, and also it's more profitable for the waste management systems, are certain types of plastic. You could also make the packaging significantly thinner. So like it's a really complex thing. And then like glass, a lot more resource intensive to produce. There's also like, there's this assumption that glass will be inherently like recyclable. It'll be easier to recycle, which may or may not be the case. Talking to consumers, I think a lot of people are surprised that not everywhere, even in the United States, recycles glass. Plastic is generally recycled everywhere, at least certain types of plastics, but it's really challenging. And there's massive issues about plastic with them leaving waste management and also as handling the massive amount of waste that we have. And maybe the better solution, instead of looking for different packaging, is to try to limit consumption. And maybe it's not the material that's the problem, it's more of our consumption patterns, but it's just a lot more complex. And it really bothers me when brands hop on the trend to talk about how their product is sustainable because they're using a different packaging material, but they haven't actually substantiated. What makes me more angry is I've seen a lot of brands do this. They're switching to bio-based plastics like sugarcane, for example. And so then they do LCAs. And so when you do an LCA, you can do cradle to gate for when your packaging leaves your facility and gets to the consumer, or you can do cradle to grave or cradle to cradle. It would make sense for a packaging to do cradle to cradle or cradle to gate at the very least. I've seen a number of companies highlighting their LCAs that they've only done cradle to gate, and that they're talking about, look, our material is so much less intensive than regular plastic. But then you go and look at every municipal waste management systems, and very few of them actually recycle this material. This is a really big bugbear. I'm sorry for being so passionate about it here. But I just, it just really bothers me, I guess, greenwashing that I see around this packaging. And it's just like fraught across the industry. Anyone else want to chime in? I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, like I said, that's what all those implications were exactly what I was talking about. And like, you just also have to realize that, as you said, different communities have different recycling standards, different recycling ways. Like I always kind of joke when I'm from California originally, grew up in California, and like when I moved to the Midwest, I was like, where's the recycling bin? Because it's just like, it was part of my habit in California. And so I think there's a lot of implications behind it. And there's actually, you mentioned the sugar cane. And I do think sugar cane is a very interesting packaging type. And I think if you do look at kind of the LCA with it, it is a little bit lower, it seems, versus like the post-consumer recycled plastic and everything. But I do think it's interesting that there was an article that came out in one of our industry magazines, and I didn't look into it too much, but it was like saying that sugarcane tubes are actually, increasing child labor because of the demand for more sugarcane because of them. And so there is so much behind this that I think this trend is getting talked about of being so important when everybody needs to realize that there's so much behind it. And we need to like kind of slow that a little bit.
And perhaps, maybe, I don't know how viable this is for the industry, considering we're like a consumer space, but perhaps the answer isn't just like switching to different packaging, but perhaps it's like slowing things down with a trend that I'm really excited about is the trend of slow beauty. I don't know how many brands are going to jump onto that because it might hurt their bottom line, but that is certainly a trend that I'm excited about. Ire.
You're advocating don't sell as much?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a
Don't know
lot of
how that's gonna
buying that.
work. Ire. Please correct me how you say your name. Do you have a comment or question?
Hello?
I can hear you.
Hi, yes, it's Ire.
Thank you, Ire.
I wanted to ask a question about innovation when it comes to mineral sunscreens. Um, so I've seen, well, we know that mineral sunscreens aren't as sheer as chemical sunscreens. So I wanted to know if it's really that difficult to formulate mineral sunscreens to be sheer, or if brands just don't care about like catering to people with deeper complexions. Because I've seen a few mineral sunscreens that are sheer, like I think it's the 11 by Venus and the Via or Bia sunscreen. So that was my question.
I'll start with this because that's actually my specialty with formulating is kind of the mineral sunscreen. So I always say something just very basic, but the whole point of a physical sunscreen is that it is physical. It's not supposed to be sheer. If you look at it at its kind of like, how it actually works, it's supposed to be a physical blocker that does reflect UV rays, and it does some refraction and absorbing too, but it is not supposed to be sheer. And so it does become a very tricky thing, is that it is very difficult to formulate a totally sheer mineral sunscreen because of the fact that it is not supposed to be sheer. And so there's a lot of kind of nuances with that. And, you can get more sheer formulas if you look to the nanoparticle minerals, nanoparticle zinc oxide. And so there's so much behind that. And it is really important. You bring up a very, very important point, is that, we do have to be cognizant of different skin tones, different skin types. And that's why I say when it comes to mineral SPF, that's where I think tinted mineral SPF has more of a market, because of the fact that with mineral SPF, they're not supposed to be sheer. They are whitening by nature and design, and that's how they work properly. There's a few famous cases with this where brands were sued actually because consumers were saying their mineral SPFs were not working, but really consumers were just not applying it properly. So there's so much behind this, but it is, speaking from experience, it is very difficult to formulate so-called sheer zinc oxide, titanium dioxide formulas. So does anybody else want to talk about this?
Yes. Hi, Ire. She's one of my followers on Twitter. I think yes, it is difficult to make mineral sunscreen sheer, but also I'm not trying to get deeply into this topic, but the beauty industry is very discriminatory. I'm not gonna delve deeper than that. I'm just gonna say that not all of them will cater to darker skin complexions. I'm not saying that formulating sunscreens isn't hard, but we are darker skin tones are not the target market for the most part. And like you said earlier, mineral sunscreens, they're not meant to be sheer, but there are ways to improve it to possibly be transparent, such as using zinc oxide due to its refractive index, and also using film formers, using antioxidants, using iron oxides, and stuff like that. Some brands are willing to take that step to cater to us, and then some brands are not willing to do that. So I don't think it's a sense of it being difficult. It's really just up to the brand's decision. So I think this leads to another thing too, is that we already know that there's a lot of disparity when it comes to darker skin tones using sunscreen. Some people of our complexion do not think that we need sunscreen. So why is a brand going to want to cater to us if there's that lack of education? So Until that starts showing some improvement, then I don't think this situation would really get fixed. Also, I do want to add that there's also a lot of fear mongering about chemical sunscreens too. So there's just so many problems around this, in my opinion. It's not something that's easy to answer.
I had one more question. So recently I've been seeing sunscreen foams and I've never really seen them before. So I was wondering if that's like a newer thing in the skincare space.
I haven't really seen foam, so it probably is a newer one. What I will point out about sunscreens, though, at least in the United States, sunscreens are regulated by the FDA monograph, whenever the final one comes out. But in that monograph, they actually describe the forms that you're allowed to use. And I'm not sure a foam would be an allowed form in the monograph. I'm not sure. I mean, the reality is like sprays have been used as sunscreens for a long time. But prior to just a couple of years ago, when the FDA changed, they modified the sunscreen monograph a bit. Sprays were technically not really allowed either, but they were on the market. So you might just not have seen foams, or they might be new just because maybe they're not actually written in the regulations. I don't know that specifically, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say with the sunscreen foams, I haven't seen those, but I do see some marketed mousses for sunscreens. Yeah, so you see the mousses, and basically what that is just a lotion that they are putting into an aerosol container. So it has a propellant in there, so you're aerating basically the lotion. And so so that is more or less what a mousse is. So that is a type that is out there, but it is a mousse where it's basically a lotion, and then they're using a propellant to aerate it to give it kind of that texture of a mousse.
Since we're getting to the end, there were just a couple of technologies that I wanted to bring up that I think they're not any like in the short term, but in the long term beauty, they might have an impact. So one of them I saw is there's a removable tattoo ink. And now this is a little afar from beauty products, but there are permanent makeups and things. But the removable tattoo ink it's encapsulated. The ink is encapsulated, and then when it's injected, if you want to get rid of it, just a single laser treatment will get rid of the ink. So I think that could be interesting in the future. Also, some years ago, there is this notion of the digital nose. And I think transferring fragrant smells over the internet, that could be coming to you, in 10 or 15 years. And then finally, another one that it made sort of the rounds a few years ago, but I don't think it's gone anywhere, was 3D printed color cosmetics. There was somebody, I think she was out of Stanford, and she made a lot of waves, maybe it was a half a dozen years ago, about a printer that would print color cosmetics. And while that might have not gone anywhere, that whole notion of 3D printing and how it can impact cosmetics, I could honestly see this solving that customization manufacturing problem, where if you just sent the formula to a consumer and then it sort of manufactures it through 3D printing in their own house, well, then your manufacturing problem is solved. So those are sort of way afield innovations, but I think those are the kinds of things that new cosmetic chemists coming in could look at, developing products for that. How would you develop products for really innovations like those? So those are just my thoughts about the future of innovation.
And I guess we're now at 8:31. So we've gone slightly over time, but just to close out this conversation, do you guys have any final take-homes that you'd like to leave with my listeners? Or you can give a very similar comment as Perry, any insights for the future of innovations for the cosmetics industry. Marissa, would you like to start this one?
Sure. Well, I'm just actually really interested too on how COVID affects our industry and post-COVID. So I'm just kind of excited to see, kind of how everything may change, in terms of especially retail and um, testers and, trying it on, trying the makeup and just kind of all of that and, focus on skincare and overall health and wellness. So I'm really excited to see post COVID how this does affect our industry. And then I was just going to say, like, science is innovation, innovation is science. So I just think this is going to be a continuing conversation for us, which is really, really important and very, very cool as well. So,
Cassandra, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I just want to say, when I think about innovation, and I love innovation, I just don't look into, the personal care industry. I go into the textile industry, adhesive, food and beverage, household, metals and paints. Like, I go into different types of industry to see what's new and how they are interchangeable, and how we can innovate our industry, our personal care industry, to use some of their concepts and ideas in the same way to make something new and awesome in the personal care industry. So I feel that people need to not just look at personal care and what everyone is doing, all the brands, the big brands are doing in that space, and I look a lot into textile industry, especially for hair, and paint industry for makeup type of stuff. So broaden your horizon, your perspective, to understand where the world is going in technology, because it's moving very fast in every industry, and it can help us be better innovators and chemists.
Lolita, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think I'm interested in seeing how like the digital beauty world continues to rise, I guess. You know, pre-COVID, we'd love to go to Sephora and, go to like a brick and mortar shop and, shop and all of that. But I think after COVID, we're seeing more direct to consumer brands. And that means brands have to get innovative in terms of their marketing strategy, their online engagement, and spending and all of that. So I think it's interesting to see how, post COVID, the digital aspect of beauty changes.
Esther, would you like to go next?
I honestly don't really have a lot to say. I think with every innovation that's going to come out, there's definitely going to be a lot of complications for one, and that we shouldn't take everything that is going to be coming out as a factual truth, and that there might be like a lot of smoke and mirrors behind some things. So I think hopefully with time we'll learn more about some like dynamic topics, like such as like the microbiome and just all these different technologies. So I think as someone said earlier, that science is innovation. So, and science is always changing. So I'm just very curious to see what's going to happen in the next coming years.
Perry, I know you already gave your thoughts, but anything to add here before we go?
Yeah, I'll just end with it's really easy for chemists to get into the industry and see things that are coming out and get kind of cynical about innovation because there doesn't seem to be a lot. But all I can say is, even though I sound kind of cynical, I implore you to always look for those new opportunities and new possibilities. I mentioned a few technologies that they might not go anywhere, and even like the microbiome and some of the things that I think are overhyped, they might not go anywhere, but that's where you should be looking. And when you're looking at innovations, I'd encourage you to look for things that can impact the performance of products. So often we're looking at trends in the beauty industry. They're not about performance. They're about and I'm so glad it didn't come up all talk, but I'm going to bring it up. Something like clean beauty or product safety. so many raw material suppliers are focusing on that, and those don't actually provide any consumer real benefits or benefits to how the products work and things. And so as you're a chemist and putting together formulas and looking for technologies, look for things that are actually going to impact how the product works. And that's where the real innovations, I think, can be found.
And I guess that's a wrap for this week's Cosmetic Chemist Dish. We'll be back next week. If you have a topic suggestion, feel free to send it to any of us, probably myself, Esther, or Skin Chemie, Lolita. Or you can put your comment or your suggestion in the webinar chat, and then we'll consider it for the topic for next week. Next week, we've also got a whole bunch going on our Discord. We have a webinar on Tuesday, which is going to be on analyzing emulsions, which will give you a high-level overview of the science behind your lotions, accessible to even people who aren't formulators, but it is geared at formulators. Then on Wednesday, we're going to be back here with a Cosmetic Chemist Dish. And then on Friday, I'm going to be here a bit earlier because I know a lot of you guys listening who will be listening to this recording, you've asked for earlier chats like this because you're in Europe and it's way past your bedtime when we do these in the USA in the evening for us. I'm in Canada, not the USA, but I'm also going to be on Friday. Stay tuned. I'll be announcing it shortly. I'll be talking with Sam Farmer about ethically navigating, should I say, the market as an indie brand. So that should be pretty interesting, but I guess that concludes our Cosmetic Chemist Dish. Thank you to all of our fabulous panelists. For many of you have come back week after week, so thank you for that, and thank you to the audience, especially those who ask questions. And then for future reference, people who tune in, ask questions. We love to answer them. Hope you all have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.